We're talking to Dr. Jodi Tommerdahl, Associate Professor of Mind, Brain, and Education. Dr. Tommerdahl, can you tell us about an active learning technique you like to use?
Sure, I'd be happy to. There's one that I use almost every year, and I've used it through several different countries because I've been teaching language acquisition in lots of different places. And right now I'm using it in a class called Introduction to the Neuroscience of Language. And part of the class involves learning about how the brain processes language, both when you're learning your first language and additional languages. So we do a lot about the neuroanatomy of language, where in the brain it's being processed, what type of processing happens at different stages. So they're doing lots of work based on reading articles, chapters in textbooks. So what I started doing is, alongside of that, is I actually put them in the position of being a foreign language learner. So while they're learning about what happens in their brain while they're doing it, they're actually doing it themselves and being in the position of, for example, a student who might be in their class, if that teacher happens to be teaching foreign languages, because I teach mostly teachers. And also, a lot of the teachers that I work with have children who don't have English as a first language, but that's the language of the classroom. So I try and put my students into the same situation as some of their students are going to be. So because I happen to speak Norwegian, and not very many of my students over the past several years, whether I've been teaching in England, France, or in the US here, have spoken Norwegian, so it really hasn't been an issue that any of the students know it, so I can call this the unknown language. And what I do on the first day of the class is, they don't really know it's coming. I get there before all the students, and as they walk in, I'm standing there with my hand out. I shake everybody's hand when they come in, and I say, "Hej, det är bra att träffa dig. Jag heter," and I say my name, and I just start speaking to them in this foreign language, and they have no idea what's going on, and they come in and just kind of go, "Hi," and they sit down. And for the first just 5 or 10 minutes of class, I go around and I just say hello in Norwegian to everybody, tell them what my name is, I ask them what their names are. They don't know any Norwegian, of course, but they can figure out just how to say what their name is and where they're from, just from the context. Then I go on to explain, as you know, this is a class where we're going to be studying how we learn foreign languages, so you're going to be in the position of learning a foreign language too. And usually there's some fear at the beginning, but within a few weeks they're really into it, and in my student feedback it turns out that it's been really the most popular thing that I do at any of my classes, and the students love it, and many of them have come to ask if I give private lessons in Norwegian afterwards because they have such a good time doing it.
So it's really engaging.
Very much so, very much so. And it's a nice match because usually I teach my class in like 3-hour chunks in the evening after they have been teaching all day. So doing the same thing for 3 hours, just sitting there and talking about the papers that they've written and going through exercises, it can get very dull and very tiring to do after a full work day. So with this, they come in, and at the beginning of class, for about 30 minutes, we just do Norwegian, and for the first, I'd say 5 or 6 weeks, absolutely every part of that section of the class is in Norwegian. We don't speak any English at all because there's no need to. And I try and explain to them that I want to get them into the situation where they are learning a language as much as possible like someone who would be immersed in a foreign culture, where they don't have someone speaking their own language to turn to and to help them. But of course, after we get to a certain point in the class, about 5 or 6 weeks in, I want to start teaching them about things like the past tense, which I could explain without Norwegian just through actions, but I also want them to use both that, the side of learning like they're in an immersion situation, but then also to be able to use all that they've learned about linguistics and language to actually be able to use that knowledge, so I can just explain to them in English, okay, we're going to go from spiser, eat, to spiste, ate. So then we can start talking about all of these verbs that we've learned in the past tense, and they learn about the form. So I teach that part in English, and then we just hop back and forth.
It's kind of an anchoring activity.
Absolutely, and it also shows that you can teach a foreign language just by using that language, or you can go back and forth. It just depends really what suits the needs of your class. So we're not purists, we're just experimenting and using what works. And it seems to work really well, and the students gain a fluency in Norwegian, which is absolutely astounding. One of the surprising things is that it's not the students who get the A's and who do the most studying who do the best. You just never know who is going to really take off and just be the best speaker in the class. Everyone really starts off on an equal playing field, and I think some of it has to do with just being open to a new experience and just being able to jump in and try.
That's great. Well, thank you.
Sure.